My name is Robert Franklin. I'm conducting an oral history interview with C.W. Brown on June 12, 2018. The interview is being conducted on the campus of Washington State University, Tri-Cities. We'll be talking with C.W. about his experiences living in Richland and working at the Hanford Site. And for the record, can you state and spell your full name for us?
CWBROWN.
Okay. Does the C and the W stand for?
Well, yeah, but I don't go by it that much, but I could tell you what it stands for.
Sure.
I don't want too many people to know it, but I will. Because when I went to the military, I had its clause, CLAUDEBROWN.
Okay.
Yeah.
CW, your family came to the area to work for Hanford, right? And what year did they come?
Well, I came in 48, so they were here about 3 years before that, 1948 when I came out.
Okay,
and they must have been here at least 2 or 3 years before that.
Okay, and what? Oh, sorry.
That was during when they were the atomic bomb they were making out here.
Yeah.
And they was online doing all that stuff. So a lot of them was doing that, and I know my father worked on the railroad out here when that came about, and my mom worked in the cafeteria.
Out at the Hanford camp?
Yeah, exactly.
And where were your parents from? Where were you from?
Texas, Kildare, Texas.
Kildare, Texas.
I think you can find about most of the Tri-City people, you'll say Kildare. That's where I was born, or where before the route was started. And that's where most all of them started, a lot of them.
Right. It seems like most of the population of the town ended up moving. Do you know how your family, how your father and mother found out about the Hanford?
Yes, this was they had contact with a family which is well known, close to the Mitchell, was the Daniels.
Right.
Was the Daniels. And my father was kind of connected with them in a relationship. And one of them came out this way. They've heard about the work. And sure enough, the information got back, which by being relatives and close partners, like my dad was on the railroad. And so they had a lot of that going on. And so this is how we got started out. And then eventually my mom came out. And then we stayed with our grandfolks in Texas. And they came out. During that time, the wives and the husband couldn't live together. They had barracks for each one. That was back in those days. Yeah. So that's how we came out here, but through Mr. Vanis Daniel. And that was the one that's, like I say, close relatives.
Right.
And that's how it got started with us. Then as we went, our relatives, we got involved and just kept going. And that's the way it started. Yeah.
What do you know about your parents' lives before they came to work at Hanford?
Before they came to Hanford, we worked, my dad worked on the railroad there, also in Kildare. And my mom was mostly like a housewife. But in Texas, most of the time, we did a little farming, and we did a lot of that. Because I can remember back when my brother and I, we was young. We started working with in them days, when you were 10, 11, or 12, you could work and take care of everything. Because we used to work and have our own little mule, little wagon, go haul little stuff to people for wood and stuff like that. And that's what we did, mostly farming. And like I said, my dad worked on the railroad for many years, which was good. But we did our own farming, living off the land.
When were you born?
1938.
1938. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you were about 7 or 8.
Exactly. Okay. When in those days, when you're young, when you're 7 and 8, you could do just about everything everybody else did because you had to work.
Right.
You had to work. There wasn't no playing around, and that's what you had to do. Survive on your own. Yeah.
What do you know about your parents' initial experience of coming to work at Hanford and finding a place to live?
Yeah, that was a very difficult situation as a family. Individual wasn't too bad, but family-wise, you had to get a house. You had to work for General Electric, as you know, in the homes, and to get into the trailer court was difficult because it's so crowded and couldn't hardly find any place. And that was the difficulty of getting us here earlier. because you found a space, and then you could buy a trailer, and then you can have your family. But the the husband and wife could not live together. They had to live in separate barracks, because if you wasn't working for GE, most of the time you couldn't get a place to live for a family.
Right.
And that was the way it was, especially in the Tri-Cities, in Richland.
And so, during the Manhattan Project, your parents lived in separate
Yes,
dorms
exactly.
because they were segregated,
It-
right? Men's and women's.
Men's and women, exactly.
And also white and black dorms?
No.
No.
That was mixed of whatever. That was a mixed situation there.
Okay.
You could find it mixed, definitely, because they had to have a place to stay, and that was very difficult. If you didn't care what color or whatever you were, same way in the cafeterias and whatever where my mom worked, they worked together.
So segregation was literally the law of the land in the
Oh, yeah.
South.
Yeah.
What were your parents' experiences here where segregation was more
Well,
informal or, kind of...
segregation was in Richland, Pasco, Kennewick. All of them had part of segregation, as you know. But some of them were worse than others, as that's life, where you go through that. And that's what you have to put up with, situation like that. And I think Kennewick had not been segregated. And to tell you, my wife's brother was the first black that lived in Kennewick. Walter Howard.
Walter Howard?
Mm-hmm. And because he got a cross on his lawn, his house got burnt, he went through all of that. He was the first black CBC college when it was over there by the airport, if you recall any information on that. Yeah, but you run into those situations no matter where you go. But see, that's why you have to bypass a lot of that, and which we did. We went through it, but this is what we have to do with that situation when people are listening to like me, I'm talking, to pass it by and look forward and see. And that's what a lot of our people has to do for that, because it's going to happen. Don't matter where you go. We ran into it. We went through it in school. We went through it when we go to play basketball in different towns. We went through some of that. But you have to overcome that. And you have to make a commitment on those situations, which carries you through. Because it could be riots, it could be this, it could be that. But you got to be smart. And a lot of times you have to have trust in God, the Christian way. And that's what it takes. For nowadays, they forget that. And that's what my family was very Christian people. Like my wife now, I bless her heart that she took us to my family. And they're all my kids are in. And it takes you a long ways when you're dealing with people. And that's what you're going to deal with in life, people.
Yeah.
And learn to cooperate and walk away from things when you see bad. But we don't do that anymore a lot of time. But you have to do that. But that's what we did. And that's why we got along with people. And my kids is the same way now. You get along with people. You're going to have conflicts in life. But you got to bypass it and make a commitment to yourself of what you're going to do and do it. So simple, really. Yeah.
What did your parents ever talk about their first impressions when they arrived here during World War II?
Well, yes. It was. Well, see, when they arrived, during those days, they never knew what they were doing. See, like when the people were working on or whatever, they never knew exactly what they were doing and what was in their environments, like they have nowadays, the technology to find out what's this or where you can't go. But they never knew that. All they knew about was, because they grew up that way, work. I want to work. Work to make a living. I have a family. What do I have to do? I have to work. And that's the way it was back in the South. They didn't have contracts. I need your help tomorrow. I experienced it. Pick cotton, all of that, chop cotton, pull corn or whatever, all of this stuff. They did it as, I need your help, Mr. Weaver or Mr. whoever. And that's the way it was. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's just the way life was.
Yeah.
Living off the land.
What were your first impressions when you arrived in the Tri-Cities?
Well, it was kind of I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how I was going to be able to accept it. But I'm going to tell you the truth on the situation is that we were athletes. People got to know us because we mingled among people, doing things, playing with people in the playground. Like I say, we used to go back to the school, play basketball, play football, play tag, play this. That's the impression I got was good because you mingled around people and people accepted you of who you were. We didn't have a lot of that. But sure, it was around, but that's kind of the way we worked it out, and it worked out good.
Sure.
Worked out good.
What about what were your first impressions about the environment or like the landscape of the Tri-Cities when you
It
got here?
that's hilarious, because jackrabbits, wherever you see fruit, all over, all type of fruit, and fishing. We used to go down to the Columbia River here and fish for fish, throw your line out there and all this. Activities for a family, something to do, things to do. That was a good impression. Open. It was open, not closed in. And that gave you more freedom, see, amongst the people. And they treated you right, and you treat them right. And we got along well that way. But that's the way we were raised.
Right.
See, if you're raised that way, you continue to do it no matter where you go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where was the first place that you stayed after you arrived?
In North Richland.
In
North Richland, what happened is we couldn't get out. We couldn't stay anywhere. That's why it took us a while to get here, until he bought a trailer and got him a spot. And that's what it was. In fact, we were probably 2 blocks from John Ball.
Okay.
We were about 2 blocks from there.
And did you go to John Ball School?
Yeah, yeah.
Could you describe it?
Well, John Ball, it was made out of you know how you see these bomb shelters? And it was how they made?
Quonset huts.
Yes, exactly. That's what it was. And that's where they were. They were lined up, 1, 2, 3 down here in the back the same way. It's just like that. Exactly. That's the way it was. Yep. Hard chairs inside, cafeteria. Yeah. But anyway, that's one thing they did. They always fed people in them cafeterias for the kids. And that was the good old days.
Could you describe the trailer? How big was it, and like what?
Well, trailers was based on what you could afford.
Okay.
That's the way it was. Because during those days, you wasn't making a lot of money. But the people that was making a little more money had better trailers with situation. Some of them had it where you could go to, have your water in them and whatever and all that. But most of them out there in those trailers, you had wash houses, they call, where you do your washing and where you do your showering. See, because the trailers we had was like, some of them was made out of like wood, and some of them was made out of the regular trailer stuff, but not very many of them. And you could see the difference of how whatever you could afford, that's what you could get.
What kind of trailer was yours?
It was made out of kind of a woodish, like these little 1-bedroom houses, as you see on the TV, where they show those little 1-bedroom houses, similar to that, exactly.
And how many were in your family?
1, 2, 3, 4.
So it's you and your brother and your mother.
In fact, I remember exactly the trailer. It was small, and it was hilarious. But when we first came here and he had set it up, it was only 1 bedroom, but we took the front where the kitchen was and made a bed so that we could sleep at night. That's where it started. That's how we were at the beginning, until we could afford to get a better, and that's what we did. It was quite interesting, but we made it. We made it that way. Survive, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your neighbors in the trailer camp, where were they from? Were they from all over?
All over. Exactly. But in a way, the black community was kind of separate. Some of them were separated. In fact, we were right up from John Ball, but we were spread out quite a bit because I knew we had a white family. I know the Hexons, all the Hexon brothers. That was a big family who lived down on the corner by the school, and there was a few more lived in between, but it was mostly kind of segregated, be honest, with the blacks in this area and a few over here because you had to get what you could get because it was so crowded.
Right.
And if it's something come available and you're on the list, you go. And that's the way, what color you were, whatever, that's the way it had to be.
And who did your father work for at this time when you were in the trailer camp?
Was it Bonot? In fact, I did a search on that. He worked for the railroad. I think it was called Bonot, something like that.
And he was working out at Hanford?
Oh, yeah. He worked on the railroad going out to Hanford and all that. And my mom worked at the cafeteria. They had a big cafeteria.
Where?
Here, out in North Richland.
In the trailer camp.
Well, it was it was where they like a big. The men, I can almost visualize it, give you an idea of the way it was. It was the men barracks, and this was the big cafeteria where everybody could come to the cafeteria, and there was a movie theater right from the cafeteria, and there was a fire station up here above, and there was Dawson Richards down here in the little town where the food store where Mr. Dietrich. In fact, I used to do a little work for Mr. Dietrich when I was a little kid. Go pick up things and take them and pick up bottles and take them down and sell them. That's kind of the way the situation was.
Okay.
And then we had the big, as you go on up, there was a big house where ice, you had to buy your ice, and that was the trailer court. And then it comes right down from by the ice place right into down to our Dawson Richland little store for clothes and over there for the food store.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of, I can visualize it all.
Right.
See it and what's going on.
That's cool.
That was major. Yeah.
Where did your family move? How long did you stay in the trailer court?
Let's see. We did it twice. First, when we came out, we stayed there until all the work had stopped. Then we moved to the other area in Hermiston. We went to Hermiston, where the McNary Dam started. And that's how the people started accumulating over there in Hermiston, because of the McNary Dam. Same contact with the family. Some more came. There was my cousin, my aunt, my uncles, and which was the Miles, and they came, and several others came. The Rambos, I can remember that, and they came to Hermiston. Probably a few more I might miss, but that's where that started. And as soon as the McNary Dam finished, they shot back to Hanford. That's where we came back to Hanford. And the trailer court had went down, but it started booming again in Hanford. And that's why we bought another trailer, which was a better trailer this time. It lived almost in the same spot from John Ball up there, where we had the other trailer.
Wow.
In fact, I can visualize it now. The trailer we had here, we knew when we just bought, and we lived right over from it in the other one. And we could walk right on down. It was amazing. It was amazing. And that's where my uncle, which the Wallaces, was my mom and his wife and my mom was sisters. And they lived next to us. And you had the Allens. All of those people were at the trailer court too. That's when it was booming again back in this area.
Was that the early 50s?
Yeah, exactly. 50, 53, 50 something, because I was in Chief Joe then.
Okay.
That's when we went to Chief Joe. And yep, you're exactly right.
And then where did you move after that? Did you get more of a permanent residence?
Permanent resident, exactly. We didn't go anyplace else.
And where'd you move to?
We moved to we were gone when the trailer court disappeared, and everything was going away. That's when the Army was out, and everything was going away. People had to move out because they were moving it. Okay, prediction was that we were going to Pasco. We already had our plans, but my dad had to get a job, and fortunately enough, he got a job for GE, for General Electric. That way, we could get a house.
And what did your father do for General Electric?
He worked he worked for on the railroad also out in the Hanford, but it was for through General Electric doing things. And also they got him another job. He was working as kind of a service somewhere out wherever, I don't know where it was, but anyway, I used to take him there, get him on the bus, and he used to go there. That's how that started. And be honest with you, athletic ability, they didn't want us to go to Pasco. Because we had Chief Joe, where we started our athletic ability with Mr. People, which was a great athletic coach. And luckily enough, like I say, before we got ready to move, in fact, we were all ready to go, he got a job in GE, and that way we stayed. And we got a house right behind the high school, Richland High, in a 2-bedroom.
Do you remember the address?
One's 805 Smith, it must have been 803 Smith, because we moved from the 2-bedroom to the 3-bedroom, and it was next door.
Oh, wow.
So it must have been something like, but that's where 805 Smith, where we stayed, but we were there until we got our bigger house.
And how long were you there in those two houses?
The rest of from when we moved there, we stayed there. In fact, most of our life.
Okay.
After that, we didn't move anyplace else.
I used to live right in that neighborhood.
Did
when
you?
I first moved here. Yeah, off Stanton, 804.
Oh, Stanton. Okay, 804. Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was easy for us to go to school.
Oh, yeah.
And it was perfect. I mean, you could go to school, go home and eat if you want to. That's where most of my rest of my life was. Okay. Right there.
Okay.
Because we went through Chief Joe, went through high school, and went all.
Earlier, you'd mentioned church and God, and so I assume your family attended church.
Oh, absolutely.
And what church did you go to?
New Hope Baptist Church.
New Hope Baptist. And that was in Pasco.
That was in Pasco.
Or it is in Pasco.
It is in Pasco. We started out in those little we started out with the church. It's amazing how things are in life and you meet people. But we started out in them little cribs, whatever you call them out there in the John Ball. Mm-hmm. They let us have one. And Reverend Wilkins, which is a senior, and Brother Green and Brother Upton came out to teach us Sunday school. That's how that started, back in those days. That was in the 52, 53, whatever. And that's how it started with accumulating for Reverend Wilkins got our church in Pasco.
And that's Morning Star.
No, that's New Hope.
New Hope. Okay.
New Hope Baptist Church,
okay.
Which is by Reverend Dr. Wayne Jenkins now, which is, but they're so close together, and they kind of associate. But that's where we went to church.
Okay.
In fact, that's where where my mom was going to church. That's where I went to church, my brother and I, and all. And it's changed a lot now than then. Because during those days, we had one of the best choirs that was around. We had, when the Army was here, a professional singer and music, incredible, was our teacher. And, I mean, we used to sing all over the place. There was the Tate's family. There was Carrie Ann. She's close to the Daniels family and whatever. Myself and Shep Tate, which is a preacher now. All of that. Mr. Orange, Robert Orange, and Mary Harrison. We had a heck of a choir. And preachers, it was just fantastic. We just sing all. It was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And like I said, right now, See, Reverend Jenkins, he works at the hospital now. He is like God sent him there for us to do whatever, as the shepherds do, and he is excellent. He takes care of people. He takes care. If anybody ever want to know anything about the Bible, which he calls the Bible, is a library, and that's where you can find everything. And he knows it from head to toe. We have Bible studies on Wednesdays. It's amazing. I used to not go as much, but now I go. My wife goes all the time. And it's amazing how things in the Bible you wouldn't believe that it's true. And it's wonderful. I mean, you say you don't like, but you get in those classes with him talking and explain it. It's incredible. And it's true life. And that's what makes it nice that you have faith and trust in somebody like that. And it's proven. And it's wonderful. And that's where we send both my daughters are in the choir. They sing. Every one of my kids are in church.
Is it still New Hope that you go to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, they're in the choir. Beautiful, sing. And it's just wonderful.
And how come your family went to because I know there were churches, Baptist churches in Richland. Mm-hmm. How come you went to Pasco?
Pasco, there wasn't any church, black churches, in Richland at that time. Okay. There's a few now. But that's where most of the black had accumulated for the churches. And when he came out, when we were in the trailer court, they're the one that came and we got the tent, inside of the school where we started our Sunday school. And that's how that started. Yeah. They came out and gave us Sunday school lessons and whatever. Yeah.
What role does church play in the black community?
Major roles. Because in the black community is one of the outgoingest things there is in the community. Because that's the way they were raised from their environments early in the years. That's how they sung. Togetherness. As you can see in some of the movies they make, how they sing and they praise the Lord and they work together with each other. See, that's the thing we need to do more now with everybody. Don't care what race or whatever you are. You need to do that. That's how we got along, you know? Church has a convention. They go up there. They go, oh, man. And coming up, seeing that, get in their wagons. They go and accumulate food. And, oh, my gosh, it's just amazing. And that's the way it should be all over, you know? And that makes you feel good when you go. And you see that.
Yeah. That
makes you, as a whole, work together as everything in life itself. It makes it easier. It makes it easier. If I cut, you bleed. If you cut, you bleed. Same blood. So, you know, and that's the way it should be.
How would you describe life in the community in Richland?
It's wonderful. Especially have a family. That's the only place to be, in a place like this with a family. We're fortunate, and people don't realize it. How fortunate you are to be in the cities where you can't go out and run and have a good time. It's just a fortune to be, and that's what's happening now. So many people are coming here because of that. Family people. Mm-hmm. What they have, activities. Incredible.
Speaking of activities, what did you do in your spare time?
Most of the time in the spare time, on age-wise, most of the time we played sports. That's a lot. And what we did is work. We always had a job when we were out of school. That was our main thing, work. Chores you had to do. It ain't like nowadays. You tell them to do something, you come, they aren't done. We didn't have to do. If it wasn't done, you know what happened back here. That was a true story. And people don't realize if you obey your parents and do things, life is a lot easier. We used to get up if we had to make our bed or do whatever and get it done. You're free to go. Just stay out of trouble. And that's what we did. Mm-hmm. And that's growing up here. You have everything in between you. If you want to go to Seattle, big city, Want to go to Spokane? Want to go to Portland? Everything's here. It's wide open. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful for family. It's just wonderful. That's why you find a family with 5 or 6 people. They don't worry about it. See, it's a lot of activities for them, something to do.
Yeah.
And it's not as good as it used to be, where you could leave your house open, leave the kids playing. They know they aren't going to do anything wrong in your house. And that's the way it was.
Do you remember any particular community events?
Yes. In regards to which? Good or bad?
Good and bad.
Yeah. We had a few, like if you're in sports and you're the only black, you're going to have conflicts. That's just obvious with people. It's almost over now. But I had it in Sunnyside once. We played. We had a little name calling and whichever, because we beat them pretty bad, but that's part of the thing. And coming up in school, I can say we didn't have as much because we were athletes, and that makes a difference.
Why?
I don't know. The people gets to know you, and they gets to meet you, and you become part of them. I would say you become part of everybody's, and they get the wrong impression before they know you of what it is until you, geez, that's a nice guy. Why do they always talk about da-da-da-da? See? And this is what happened with a lot. They become your best friends. And that's what happens. A lot of times if some people let go and let the kids work it out themselves, it's a lot better. And I had another conflict in school where I was a prince. And we went over to Kennewick to a dance. They wouldn't let us in.
You wouldn't let who in?
Wouldn't let me and my escort in. We both were black. And they hadn't segregated. That's over there it was a teenager house where we just had our deal, and we were all going dancing. And so they wouldn't let us go in. And that's where that situation's are. But it got straightened. But it takes sometimes something like that to happen to start things rolling. And so that was a great event. There was myself, Carrie Ann Barton. She was involved in it. It was a big write-up. You probably could go back into the history back in that days when I graduated in 58 and around in that area in 57, and you could find it in the Tri-Cities.
I think I've seen that.
Have you?
I think I've seen what you're talking about in the paper. Right?
Exactly.
You were.
Right.
It was a public place.
Exactly.
Public
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
Yeah. You have been refused entry.
Exactly. And those things happen, and I think it happens for the good in some respect. Just like everything else, like when Martin Luther King marched, say we will overcome. Things happen for a purpose, to make it better for other people, and that's what it takes sometimes.
What about more positive community events? Do you remember like the annual like Atomic Frontier Days?
Oh gosh, yes, all of that, all the different incredible things on all events and situations like that. Was a lot of entertainment, and like I say, in the community, they didn't accumulate as much as black and other races together like they do now on different events, like bringing stars in and doing this and stuff like that. But I can't think of too many other incidents like they have now, the boat races and all of this stuff as a community. They didn't have a lot of that then days.
We were talking about events.
Exactly.
Were there any accommodations that you or events that you were unwelcome at or refused because of your race. Besides the event in Kennewick?
No.
How many blacks were pretty much a minority in Richland,
exactly.
Right? How many black families were there that you can?
Well, give you an example. I think it was only 5 black in Richland High School. I think it was myself, and I think it was about 5 that I know of. Mm-hmm. And I think we were close to 1 or 2 coming here. In fact, It wasn't that very many, because not very many worked for General Electric.
Right.
See? And the ones that worked out there mostly lived in Pasco, especially in the black community.
Mm-hmm.
Pasco was the main area.
Were there any divisions between the blacks that lived in Richland and the blacks that lived in Pasco?
You had to ask that question.
I did, yeah.
You had to ask. It's hilarious. To me, it is. Because people get on our case. Oh, you guys live out in the rich part of town. You know how they go. You live in Richland. We live in Pasco. And they thought it used to just ache. Especially my mom, my wife, when we used to go, when I was married and had kids and all. Oh, you guys think you're so good because you live in Richland. It wasn't that. We did have that little conflict there with the black. See? Because we lived in Richland. And we were fortunate enough to live in Richland. And it happens. People think you're more high class. That's what they think. Even so, we dress the kids nice, and when they go to church, people get inferiority complex or something on that. You know, like, how can they afford to dress them like that or do this? We had comments like that. Seriously, it happened. It happened to a lot of the families that coming from Richland and living in Richland. And like we say, you can live anywhere you want if you want to. You can buy any kind of car you want if you want to. If you determined to do it and made a commitment, you can do it. And there was jealousy. That's all it was. Yeah. Thought we were high class, but we wasn't. We just living the life where God had blessed us to be.
Do you recall any family or community activities, events, or traditions that people brought from the places they came from that basically that the blacks brought from Texas up here?
I can't recall. Events in church, I know they have those. That's norm for there and here. They had all kind of events there. Like they have a, like we just had the church been there 60 years. I'm just saying events like that situation, and like they have a pastor is anniversaries. They have all these anniversaries. They do that now here. And go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask, what about like food? For
Food.
example?
They don't have a feast, but they do it on anniversaries. And we just had one this past week where it was the 65 years, and they not just have a feast where they do have June 16, 18 or 16 or whatever.
Juneteenth?
Yeah, they do that, which is a big event together where they have all the different soul foods and whatever. Though that don't come about every year.
What about with the family, or did people bring their food traditions with them up here? Like, did your parents bring the foods of the South, the soul food up?
Absolutely,
up with them?
Absolutely. How they cook it and how they make it and all that.
What kind of foods in particular do you
remember? Barbecue, sweet potatoes, black-eyed peas, okra, cabbages, greens, good old long onions, good old where you just take a good old bite, squash and stuff like that. This is what they lived off the land. Tomatoes, they lived off the land with all of this type of food. Iced potatoes, that kind of stuff. They lived off the land to survive. And that's what when you go, and we just had a feast in church, and they had all of that. Oh my gosh. Cornbread, make their own. Used to make their own butter, milk the cow. I used to chew in myself.
Back in Texas?
Back in Texas, absolutely.
Wow.
I used to do that. Kill their own. That's where I say, as a family, they got together, and they did all this stuff together. And they feast. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. Incredible food. Yep.
Right.
Good stuff. Didn't have all this organic stuff in this, and it's unreal.
Wow.
Unreal.
Were there opportunities available here that were not available where you or your parents came from?
Absolutely. Your opportunity to go to the store, transportation, that was a major thing.
What do you mean opportunity to go to the store?
I mean, your store you had to go to there, you had to go miles, or you had to buy all you need here because you had to go 10 or 12 or 13 miles to get to a store to get the other type of groceries.
Oh, okay.
See, you were out here and farming and wherever, they have it in one little central area.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody would come like this. It isn't like now you could get on a trolley, a bus, or things, and go or walk to it easily. No. That's a difficult thing. And you see a lot of them take their wagon, get the mule hooked up, take off to the store, get all the sugar and all of this stuff and flour in big sacks, so they didn't have to go. So you can see it's a great difference.
What about education?
Education was good, but not as good because of the work status. It had been many times you had to pull out my uncles. When I lived with my grandfather, there was 14 in a family, my mom, and had to stay, chop cotton, pick cotton.
You mean they had to be pulled out of school?
Exactly. And you had to do that to survive on living.
Right.
And that's what made it so experienced to see that and what happened and how they're doing it nowadays and what they have and how they don't take advantage of what they have nowadays, like what they had to do back in those days. I experienced that and got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Living off the land. No water. How do you get irrigation? It wasn't no irrigation. What is irrigation? God has a way of doing it. And that stuff grow incredibly. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
It really is. To think about that. But I got to experience and see it. That's what makes it nice. And you see now, water? What's that? Hot? I mean hot. But it grows.
Yeah. In what ways were opportunities here limited because of segregation or racism?
Well, it's hard to say. You're not limited anymore, I don't think, too much. I think it's mostly, you don't find that anymore as much as it used to be, because it's changed in the South. And that's where it used to be, you go to the back door, he go to the front. We experienced that. I experienced that. But you don't have that anymore, which is good.
What about here? Were there opportunities that were limited when you were a child or coming up?
Well, in certain areas was. Like I say, Kennewick was that way. But other than that, I didn't experience too much of other places. And like I say, by being small group of people in the area, it wasn't too bad because they got along well. But it could still be there, which it's going to be every place, no matter where you go. But you don't see it as much. And that's because it was a small community of black in the area. And that's where and the most of those people was Christians. See? And that makes a difference in a family. You come from Christian families, you're going to find the cooperation is great. And that's what it takes. You know, you treat me well, I'll treat you well.
Yeah. Did segregation or racism affect your education?
Say it again?
Did segregation or racism affect your education?
Did it lower it?
Did it affect it? Your education?
Oh, no. That was up to me to do whatever you have to do in your classwork. And to prove the point is that whatever you did, you didn't know whether you're doing it right or wrong, whether they did it, but you assume you were because they did pass your way, pass you, give you a grade, give you whatever. And by that time, you would compare other people, you could tell. You could tell by other people what they're doing in the class or whatever, and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell the smart one, the one that's not smart.
Who were some of the people that influenced you as a child?
As a where?
As a child.
As a child? As a child, I think my parents influenced me by work. And I think as teachers, coaches, how to discipline and what you can do with your life. You look at some of the coaching staff and some of the teachers, that they could take more time with you when they know that you're struggling. And that was a blessing. I can go back, because you can look at some of the teachers will take you in and say you need help in this and help in that. Because like a lot of our people has slow learners because they were taken away from a lot as they grew up, coming from the different environments. But it got where you make a commitment for something, you do it. And that's what it took. A lot of people, I can use that as an educational with C.J. Mitchell. That's a good example. He was almost, 35, 40, before he got his degree in something. But he kept going. Still have a job and going, but he wanted to get better. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. And that's what you have to do when you lose out on a lot of that. You look at your coaches. You look at how they treat you and try to help you and do things for you. That's a motivator. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of it. I had a lot of it in my lifetime, because I got mixed out on school in certain ways when I was younger. Like they knew me tutor people, when we were moving around here, moving there. It affects you. It really does.
Yeah. You graduated in 58?
58.
58. And what did you do afterwards?
Afterwards, I went to school. Went to CBC for 2 years. Played sports there. Had a scholarship. I went there 2 years. My brother and I both. And after I left CBC, I went up to, Cheney. Got a scholarship in Cheney.
For Eastern Washington?
Eastern Washington, yeah. Up at Cheney. And I had a scholarship in basketball there, but it didn't work out. So during that year, I dropped out. And I shouldn't have. But I did. That's the year they was drafting people into the service. Mm. And I got drafted into the Army, 24th Division, Germany. I went. And on a story, as you talk about that, I met my wife at CBC. She was from California. That was her brother that I was telling you about in Kennewick. And I went and got married. She was from Bakersfield, California, my wonderful wife. And I got to Bakersfield, California, took my mom and took all. And my brother didn't call me and tell me I had my papers for the military. And he finally told us, and my wife says, "Tell him I'm pregnant, tell him I'm this, tell him you don't need to go." But I went into the service and went over in Germany. And I stayed in Germany 4 years. Special duties. I was in the 24th Division. Went all over Europe as basketball divisions. I got to travel all over Europe. It was amazing. Italy, France, Germany, Austria, all over for 4 years. And I was a basic trainer for physical education, bayonet training, hand-to-hand comeback training. I did that for 4 years over in Germany. And that's when I was in AIT in California. My wife got pregnant. And she said, "It's time for you to come home." And I didn't come home because I extended for a year. And that's where she called the Red Cross. And they say, "Yep, he's extended, and so I wasn't able to see my daughter when she was born, and that's where my life started, right there. But I grew up over there in the military. I would tell anybody to go to the service, whatever you have, it grows you up. It makes a man out of you. Because I knew I had responsibilities. And it just was the wonderful thing I could have ever done. Mm-hmm. And I stayed in there 4 years and got out, and went to reserves. And I started working for GE. That's where I started again.
Out at Hanford.
Out at Hanford.
And what year was that?
64, 65.
And what did you do for GE?
GE, I worked in the mailroom. That's where a lot of us started, in the mailroom. That's where I started, in the mailroom. And because when I first left and went into the military, I had started to work for GE, but I got drafted. And so Mr. Wood, out of here, the Woods Nursery, he worked for the GE into the person, hiring people. And I'll never forget him. He says, don't worry about it. He said, when you get out, he worked for GE, we'll get you a job. And sure enough, they did. So when I got out of the military, boom, they got me a job. It was wonderful. And that's kind of the way it happened on that.
And how long did you work out at Hanford?
Most until I retired here, because they changed companies.
Yes.
As they changed companies, like I went from GE to Westinghouse, from Westinghouse to Bechtel, from Bechtel to back to Westinghouse, and I'll never forget when I was working for GE. Me and one of my friends, I forget his name. We had to change the lights in the old fixtures of the lights they had up in the downtown in the 703 building. Oh, 703 building, still that one. That's where I started out, him and I, taking the lights down, cleaning them. And then as the thing go, I started working for GE, and then I went to Battelle, and I went to Westinghouse, and that's where I started most of my work, working on FFTF.
And what did you do at FFTF?
I was a manager, a supervisor. I was
supervisor for?
Of mailroom, duplicating, reproduction, and all the satellites for the projects. I had, 12 women and one guy working for me. And I worked there, and I never forget that I worked for a guy named Lawrence Smith. He was a go-getter. And when I first started working out there in the area, when we started to put up the project number 2, I was in charge of all of duplicating, reproduction, buying equipment, buying all that.
When you say project number 2, do you mean the Washington
Northwest Energy? Yeah.
Energy
They used to call it WHOOPS.
Yes.
Yeah. We had 5.
They like to get away from that acronym now.
We had 5 projects going at the same time.
Right. But only one.
One of them made it.
Yeah.
All of them was, what a mess.
Yes.
What a mess. I mean, I had equipment going back to people just don't. Oh, it's so much. Oh, that was a disaster. But we made it through. But the one project's going is still going.
Yeah.
That was a good experience. I used to have my group have to work litigations, and oh my gosh. In fact, my kids worked out there, a couple of them, Laquita and Chrissy, and one of my others too, Carolyn, the ones in Vegas. But it was it was quite a deal, though. See all that stuff just go to, with all the money that people, SAT, all of that. But anyway, that was my experience working. I worked there and retired. Out of there, I've been retired 23 years. I took the early retirement. My wife worked for Battelle. She put 30 years in. We both retired at the same time, 1994, I think it was.
Wow.
Yep.
What did your wife do at Battelle?
She's in charge of the library.
Oh, okay.
She worked at the library. She used to go to Washington, D.C. to do things and everything. She had it was a good job for her. She loved it. She's dedicated anyway, because that's the way she is in the church. She's on a treasury, this and that, but she loved the library stuff. Mr. Wayne Snyder was her boss. Quite a guy. Yep. Wayne Snyder. Never forget it. We talk about him now. Yeah. But anyway, she worked there 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
For the whole time for Battelle.
Yeah, Battelle.
Wow.
She worked all the time for Battelle. She was in photography for a while, and then she went on to the library, and she worked her way up through that. Yeah. Been married 57 years.
Wow. Wow.
I know it. I need a trophy. I keep telling her that when we talk to people in the church, and she said, "You guys have been married, what, 57 years, and I need a trophy." But it's been wonderful. It really has.
Good.
To be able to do that, travel, and the time go by so fast. And that's why she says, in fact, the pastor just told her the other day, we were having Bible study, and we were on a subject like that, and she says, "Lita, how long will you work for Battelle?" She said, 30 years. That's what I want to tell you. You made a commitment to what you wanted to do. And that's what Christians should do, he said. Make a commitment of what you want to do. And you did it. And look at you now. See? You make that commitment in life, what you want to do, and you can do it. But you got to make a commitment and do it and stick to it. Yep.
How would you describe your relationships with your coworkers and your supervisors at Hanford?
In Hanford, wonderful. Because whatever they wanted, I did it. And to say this so, they used to call me No Problem Brown. Go see him. He'll take care of you. That's what they used to call me. The litigation, the lawyers used to need stuff. I didn't care what it cost, overtime or whatever. My relation with them was good. It had to be because I was in a service department. Mm-hmm. And you got to learn when you're in something like that, do whatever they want you to do. Not say I can't. I'll try and do it, whatever it takes, and get it done. Too many people criticize, "Oh, we don't need to do this. That ain't right. This ain't what you need to do." Do it if they want it. And that's what happened. That's what made my job so easy. And I tell the people, "Can you work overtime tonight or whatever?" "Yes, I'll do it." "Can you get this out?" "What do we need to do? Need to take it downtown commercial?" Do it. Commit. I didn't have any problem with any of them because I did my job of what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And they was managers and whatever. Let them fight the problem, not me. And I didn't have any problem. That's why I was successful of retiring in the same place. Yeah.
What kinds of interactions did you have with coworkers and supervisors outside of work?
Outside of work, I can't recall any outside of work. You saying people outside of work, or just supervisors, or how you want to?
The people you worked with and your supervisors, because I imagine even in the 60s and 70s, mm-hmm. right? But blacks would have been a minority, a real minority.
Well, I really didn't have any problem with that, be honestly, because I was raised to do your job if you're working for somebody, and do a good job. Don't matter what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Do a good job, and you ain't got to worry about who you are or what you're doing here or there. Do your job like it's supposed to be, and you won't have a lot of problem.
In what ways did the security and secrecy at Hanford impact your work or daily life?
Security?
Yeah.
Not really, because you knew the security violations of whatever you had to do. No. Security was good for the people, good for you, because you had to provide by the rules and regulations. And that's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
If you do something you're not supposed to do in regards to their rules and regulations, you get punished for it. Simply. It's just like driving a car. If you aren't supposed to go 25 and you're going 40, that's you. Yeah. The rules and regulation doesn't say that. You can do that.
What was your What do you know about your parents' reactions to learning that the work they had done contributed to the development of the atomic bomb?
Well, they didn't know what they were doing till the fact came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
Well, I don't remember too much about it until I was so young
Yeah.
during that time until I found out why and what they were doing later. Kind of frightened me about it because some of the things that came out about into the parent situation about radiation, which my mom went through it. Yeah, my dad was exposed to it, but not as bad. But other than that, I can't recall because I was kind of young when that happened until I found out later that the people didn't know what they were doing. They were just working. And that's tough, but that's the way life was. And you have to accept it the way it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important legacy of the Hanford site?
The most important is work, nuclear, electricity, environments, keeping it clean for other generations. That's one of the most important because the danger that they set here on Hanford, soon you say the word Hanford, people think about, radiation, this and that. And that's just the way life is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's...
What, I'm going to move on to
Sure.
talking about civil rights now.
Okay.
What were the major civil rights issues for African Americans at Hanford and in the Tri-Cities during your time here?
I can't recall too much in the Tri-Cities.
Yeah, and at Hanford.
Let's see how can you put that in another way?
What kinds of civil rights issues was the black community in the Tri-Cities struggling with? What were the main areas of concern?
Okay. I think work, jobs. You could see a lot of that. I'm giving an example. $10, they're getting $12. But I'm doing more than they are. I'm a specialist. I'm a service worker. You see a lot of that, and that was really a tough situation. In fact, that go on now. It goes on, politics, situation of people, know people, and they do this and whatever. But that's the only thing I can see. But a lot of people don't know that unless they communicate with people and find out.
Yeah.
Other than that, it goes on. That I'm making a good living, I'm doing good, and whatever. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they get say, well, we're only getting so-and-so. You getting what? I'm not even getting that. Communication through things. It happens that way. Segregation situation. And I think a lot of times, to be honest, we do it ourselves. We're afraid to take a chance on situations. Like go in there and ask for a job or get an application and do things like that. We're frightened to say, they ain't going to hire me because of my... But that's not really true. You never know until you do. You got a good background, you have a trace of a good background, somebody will see you. But never give up. Keep moving forward.
Any other issues besides employment that the black community struggled with in the Tri-Cities? What about housing?
Housing?
Yeah.
No. I don't think so, because no, because I can go with my family where I live. I live with all the area where the Mormons. They become as a family. It was wonderful. I had a house built in 1972 over there. I'm still there, and just like now. my daughter lived out in West Richland where the new houses Hayton put up. They bought one there right in the middle of everybody. It's money counts now.
Well, what about historically? You mentioned that your wife's brother
Yes.
had tried to live in.
He did live in Kennewick.
So historically, was housing a concern for the African American community in the Tri-Cities? Quality housing?
Well, because if they could afford it, they could live in Kennewick or Richland. Not Kennewick, but in Pasco or Richland. But over there, you found very few people would live over there in Kennewick because of the surrounding of where you would be.
Mm-hmm.
But in Pasco, they were mostly on the east side. Now, be honest, it moved. They started moving on up. You know how people, generation as generation, get involved in it. But in Richland, if you could afford it, because it was expensive more in Richland, in the areas, different new areas. The old areas wasn't too bad where the old, what you say, during the war houses, prefabs and pre-cuts and situation, but they were selling like a dime a dollar in those days. Mm-hmm. But if you had the job to be able to afford it, you could do it. And that was the basic there.
That kind of goes back to your first point, though, right? Where jobs were a concern because at times, jobs may have been there, but African Americans were being paid less for the same job, or there were classes of jobs that just weren't really allowed.
Exactly. You analyze it perfectly. That's
so
exactly.
That kind of influences the quality of housing.
Absolutely. You're right. Absolutely. I'm only making this and they making that, and how can they afford it? Situations. That happened. Because
that happened to C.J. Mitchell, right?
Absolutely.
That he had been, people thought maybe because he bought a nice house and maybe they were paid him too much.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're exactly right. And that's the same way with us. That when we moved over there, and the people that worked was worse than the people where we live. They said, "Where you live?" "I live in Westview Acres." "What?" And she said she saw a supervisor drive by her place and says, "That's where you live?" And she drove. We had a Mercedes. I drove a Mercedes, 1978 Mercedes. She drove it to work. She didn't drive it no more. How can you afford a Mercedes? Those type of things. How can you do this? How can you do that? She couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
We parked it. Yeah, we still got it though. It's a good car, still restored.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it was her baby. But anyway, you're right. That's you run into those situations. Yep, you're paying them too much.
What action was taken to address the disparity in jobs and housing?
In regards to buying, selling, or getting?
Yeah.
Well, like I say again, I go back to if you could afford to do it, there was no problem. But to get into a certain neighborhood, you couldn't. It was limited to certain things because of that. And to tell you the truth, on something else in regards to what you're talking about, in selling a house or buying a house, people would want to know who's moving next door. We just went through that with my daughter. They were selling a house, but the people seen the pictures, and they couldn't sell it. Soon they took the pictures down and showed that it was black. Sold right away. That's amazing. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I follow what you're
saying.
Yeah.
So you can see, on those, it just happened too recently to this house that he ready to sell out in Richland because it's upstairs and it's a 5-bedroom and the kids are all mostly gone. He said, "I will not leave any pictures of anything here," and it sold pretty fast.
You mean pictures of the family?
Yes.
Yeah.
Knowing that they were black. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That happened. People don't realize it, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see what I'm referring to.
Oh, yes, very much.
Yep.
Who were the important leaders of civil rights efforts in the area?
In the area, I have to go way back on that. I think mostly was, I think CJ had a lot to do with some of that. And you have the pastors, Reverend Wilkins. He was a strong man as a pastor through all this. He worked down, I think he worked for GE or some of them people, but Reverend Wilkins was a very strong believer in that. And Reverend, I can go all the Reverends really. Reverend Jackson, he was quite a leader. Reverend Upton.
Reverend who?
Upton?
Upton?
Upton, UP, I guess that's the way you spell it, Upton.
Okay.
And I'm trying to go. Well, you had like Reverend, I know he was. I'm trying to figure out his, gosh. Who else from that? They had, some of those names will come to me later, but won't come to me now. Reverend Allen, that's who I wanted to say. He was a real strong believer in that, because Reverend Allen, he was quite a guy.
Why were the Reverends so much at the forefront of civil rights?
Because of the Christian type. You know, just like Martin Luther King's situation, Christian. And that's why they believe in the Bible and believe in that all people are treated equally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it was taught. And that's one of the main things in the church as a pastor, that and like they say, the dictionary is here in the Bible. And you follow that, you can't go wrong. So that's kind of the way things were with them people back there. Reverend Allen was a plumb believer, and he was with the missionary through all the big churches. He was in charge of all that through Seattle and whatever, and pushed all that stuff. He was really one of the head top nachos in that.
What were some of the notable successes of civil rights efforts in the area?
Oh, God. Non-believers? Did you say non-believers?
No, what were some of the notable successes?
Oh, the successes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I follow you, what you're referring to. Well, I'm trying to recall some of the situation with that. Successful. Okay. People used to not to vote. That was one of the main things. People would not sit back, so they aren't going to see. But every vote counted. They used to they publicized that very well in the churches, and that was the main thing. To get us better, to get where we're at, we need to go and vote. That was one of the main things in their life that they would publicize of what you need to do. They would bring that up in church. In fact, they do that now. And that was the main thing. So you have to get out and support the things that you want to have done. If you don't, they just continue to do them.
Right.
That was the main issue.
Yeah.
One of the main issue on that. Get out and vote on this stuff. You're a citizen, and you have the rights. But a lot of them just, they don't listen to me.
Right.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest challenges, civil rights challenges?
Of having your right to go places, having your right to buy things, not because of your color, and having the rights to be able to live where you wanted to live. That was some of the big issues, I think, in regards.
Those issues here?
Well, yeah, you did. You're always going to have those kind of issues. You have them, no matter where you go. You're going to have them. And you're going to find people that it's fading away because we're moving forward instead of staying down where it's bad. We want to move forward in regards to what's going on. And yeah, you're going to run into the issues. You got to ignore them and go on and try to make things right, because that's the way life is.
Yeah.
You look at the past, you got to let the past go and look at the things that are going forward. We got to move forward, because we can't think about the past of how, and that's why our ancestors set a past for us and come up with these situations, like you say, the Martin Luther King went for the march and this and that, and voting, getting out the vote. These are the things you need to do to make it better.
Right. Were you directly involved in any civil rights efforts?
No, not really. Not really.
Okay.
No.
Um,
Nope. I just stayed mostly in sports. Coaching and.
Do you think sports was a special kind of path to acceptance for African Americans? Did it offer you something special in terms of acceptance?
Yes. Sports was like, I coached for 28 years. I did at Hanford and I did at Cooperative. Me and Emmett Jackson. You know Emmett.
Yep.
And the people accepted us as who we were and what we did. We didn't do it as politics-wise. We did it as a person who wanted to make a commitment to do what they had to do.
Right.
The discipline that they had. And this is the way we coached. And people love that. We used to have people say, well, what's wrong with him? How come you aren't playing him? Or how come you aren't doing this? The simple answer is, come to our practices. He came to the practice and he left. Next day he said, I see what you're saying. See? You bring people in to see what's going on when you're trying to help them and they don't cooperate or do what they're supposed to do. Let them see it themselves. And that made it different. That made it not. And because we treated them as human, as if they were my kids or whatever.
Right.
And we tell the parents, give them to us for an hour and then you can have them back. Leave them alone. And we have nowadays a guy saying, hey, Coach Brown. You can tell how you treated the people to give you that respect that you did it right.
You and your brother were kind of sports stars in Richland.
Right.
Right, Richland High School.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who I interviewed earlier, but someone said that it seemed to them that high school was harder for black women because they didn't have the sports outlet. Whereas if you could play sports, there was a degree of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Would you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it could be negative and could be positive in some respect. It's how that other person and you react to the environments of the people. See, I might take it a different way because they treat me in a different way with what I do than compared to what they do. So there'll be a difference in that situation.
Were there ever any social or sporting events when you were in high school where your race was an issue?
Yes. There was, especially one when we were playing. That's what you're referring to. Like Sunnyside, we had a problem. Breakout. Yeah. You probably heard about that one. Emmett probably told you about that too. That's when we was in high school. And they didn't see very many black. And when we do go play out, we dominate. And when you dominate somebody in their own place, you get criticized, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that was an outbreak. They had to call the police, had to do this, whatever.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They had to call the police and everything, escorted us out of there.
Who were the police called on, or what was the
security? They called them on because the coaches called it too. Art Daywall, he was the coach
of Richland.
On that situation. Never forget it. Yep, an outburst because we beat them so bad, and they them so and so, so and so. It was bad. It was really bad. It was in the paper. I'm sure if you go back in those days, you could probably easily find it.
Did they use?
Oh yeah.
Racially
Yeah.
language?
It was out. Yep. They don't belong here. These. But anyway, I'll never forget that. That was the only most disaster thing that ever happened. That was in high school. And I think you go back and find the paper, it'll be in the paper.
Do you remember what year that was?
Let's see. It had to be in my high school year, because my brother and I both was playing together. So that had to be in 57, 50, 55, 56, 57, in that area, because we both was playing.
How is Norris older or younger?
Older.
And what
year.
1 year.
1 year.
1 year. Okay.
Yep, he was a year ahead of me. Year ahead of me. That was only a big outburst we had.
Did you ever? How do I ask this question? What was dating like? Were you ever? Because sure you may have had friends.
I got
you. May have
you.
had lots of white friends. But
Gotcha.
Was there any strict
Gotcha.
requirement?
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
Datings was very interesting because of sport athletic ability that you have. You aren't going to have much problem. I had a white girlfriend, dated her, live out in North Richland here, and we're in school together. You know how you go down and you go to the locker with them and this and that. Okay? They had an outburst. Somebody did. And they found out who was doing the outburst. Our vice president, I'll never forget him, Solly, or you heard the name Solly? He was our president, and him and George Mulligan, called the guy in and said, we aren't going to have this. And they called us and apologized to me.
When you say an incident, what do you in guy?
But what they did is they didn't want us to date the white girls, and they was prejudiced against it.
Was this other students or parents?
Students. They even had assembly on it.
Had assembly about what?
About this situation.
Oh.
To the people, and told them. Said we weren't going to have it. Honestly, I'll never forget that. We used to have assemblies all the time before basketballs and things, and any activities. The president brought it up.
So there weren't a lot of African Americans in Richland High School. So
No.
did you feel like this was? I mean, you and your brother this was targeted at about your situation.
Right. Because that happened in junior high in Chief Joe. And as that led on, we didn't have any problem after that. They showed the support through the faculty of the president and all of that. Boy, it went away. Never did have any other problem.
Huh.
Never did have any other problem. They treated it just like whatever. And I could say a lot of it probably was our athletic ability of what we did for the school and for the community. Got well known, and that carries us through it. And like I say, I can only count little ones, not a lot of them. Same way go to the sock hop, they used to call it, didn't they? They call your name and call your girlfriend up to start out. I can remember that. And it showed how closely you were with the facilities of the people. And that makes you feel good to show you had that support.
Yeah.
Yep. I went through it, experienced it. Yep.
I just have two kind of open-ended questions left.
Mm-hmm.
The first is, what would you like future generations to know about working at Hanford and living in Richland during the Cold War?
During that time, during the Cold War,
Mm-hmm.
that was many years, wasn't it?
It was about 45.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So, I tell you,
I guess maybe like the high point of the Cold War, you know.
yeah, I know. Of living in that environment, you know, it doesn't affect you as much as you think about it until afterwards.
Mm.
Because you can't see exactly what's going on. You can hear about it, and you until it happens or what done happened in the Cold War or what your parents went through. Because you can't see it. All you were is trying to have a good time, go to school, and do things like that and enjoy life. Where they were doing things is incredibly. And so the experience did not change in regards to being a young person or whatever. We still had the activity, but in those days we made our own activity situation where we would be happy. As long as our parents was working and bringing in something for food, we were happy because we were not informed with the other situation. They didn't publicize it like they publicize now. Because they got all this stuff now, they know what's going on, what's this and whatever going on, and people know. All we was concerned about going to school, parents was working, making a living, and getting some food in the old stomach. And having a good time. And that's what we were concerned about back in those days.
Sure.
Yep. That was it. And that's how we met a lot of friends, too, by that situation. Making our own playground, making our own things together, and communicating together. And that's what made it nice.
Yeah.
It made it nice, and wherever it's not like that anymore. Gosh, it just aches you to see it. But that was the good days. Good days. Because you can, like now, I see Hexons. I don't know if you know him or not. Jerry Hexon and Roger was the old. But we used to play together. They're white, and we just had a good time. We made our own fun, and they don't do that anymore. It's just that's why you have so many problems with segregated people and this and that. But Christians, that means a lot. When you have faith and trust in God, in those situations, in your family, it carries you a long way through life. Makes you think twice instead of blowing up. And that's what it is. Communicate, you listen. I learned that when I was working, when I used to go to seminars. The guy used to get up after we go through everything. He'd say, I'm going to leave this with you people. Learn these two things in your life. Learn to listen and communicate. And you got it. It's amazing. Yep.
Is there anything else you would like to mention related to migration, work experiences, segregation, and civil rights, and how they've impacted your life at Hanford and Richland?
Yeah, I think growing up as you could single out a person in my life, where I grew up, wasn't a lot of black or whatever, I think it was a good experience to be able to communicate different race. When you know you were down, lower race, which they considered, but you didn't have to be. And that you prove yourself you could go higher. That's what I'm saying to people. Prove yourself. Soon you prove yourself, bam, you got it. Same way they say you're living in an area where the Mormons, they're human. Treat them right. We used to go to the, my son, we used to take to Father Days. You do all of that. Human beings. And that's why I say about Richland, so great with a family people. And that's what it is. It's just great. And that's what we should have all over It makes it easier for everybody. Why we get used, my family, that my neighbors, they have potatoes, they bring potatoes to me. They have this, they bring some to me. Vice versa. You need help with this, I'll help you. It's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Makes you feel good. And you bring your kids up the same way.
Yeah.
And they doing the same thing.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. Now I see some of the kids of his and all my neighbors. Hey, Mr. Brown. Hey, it's wonderful. Makes you feel good. Makes you feel good. In an environment that you live in, that you can have trust and faith in people. God is good all the time.
Yep. Well, CW, thank you so much for coming and
No
interviewing
problem.
with me today. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay.
My pleasure.